It was a quiet Saturday morning when I found the envelope taped to my front door. At first, I thought it was some advertisement, but the bold HOA letterhead told me otherwise. As soon as I opened it, my stomach sank. The letter read, in big capital letters, "Violation notice, pending fine." Apparently, my crime was leaving. My trash can visible on the side of my house for, wait for it, 2 hours after. Collection day. 2 hours! I laughed out loud because it felt so ridiculous. But before I could even finish shaking my head, I saw the signature at the bottom. Karen Whitfield, HOA committee chair. Karen was infamous in our neighborhood. The type who measured grass blades, checked mailboxes for rust, and called the city over a squeaky gate hinge. She was our HOA's self-appointed sheriff, and her weapon of choice was the violation notice. That morning, she wasn't content with just taping the letter. Oh no. Karen herself was standing across the street, arms folded, glaring at me like I'd committed some unspeakable crime. "Do you understand the rules?" she snapped as I pulled the paper off my door. "Yes, Karen," I replied, forcing a calm tone. But it was literally 2 hours. "Doesn't matter," she said, her voice sharp. "Rules are rules. That'll be a $100 fine." I almost choked. $100? For leaving my trash can out for 2 hours? Her eyes lit up, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "You don't like it? Take it up with the board. But good luck. They stand with me." She smirked and walked off, clearly enjoying the idea of me squirming. At first, I considered just paying it. But something inside me snapped. Why should I hand over money for such a petty, ridiculous complaint? I decided to show up at the next HOA board meeting and make my case. When that day came, I walked into the small conference room where the board sat in a line like judges. Karen, of course, sat in the middle looking smug. "Mr. Collins," she said, tapping her pen, "you're here regarding your fine?" I nodded. "Yes, I think this is absurd. 2 hours late with a trash can does not justify a $100 fine." Karen's lips curled into a grin. "Well, the board will hear you out. But don't expect sympathy." The room fell silent as the board shifted uncomfortably. That's when the HOA treasurer, a man named Harris, cleared his throat. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Not at me, but at Karen. "Actually," he said slowly, "this isn't as simple as you think." Karen frowned, caught off guard. And then Harris dropped the words that made the entire room freeze. "Why are you trying to find the man who pays our salaries?" The words hung in the air like thunder. "He pays our salaries." The entire room fell silent. Even Karen's smug smile faltered, just for a split second. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard Harris correctly. The treasurer's calm, steady gaze didn't waver, though. Karen laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Excuse me, Harris, but what does that even mean? Residents don't pay us. They pay their HOA dues." "That's completely different." Harris shook his head. "Not really. Karen, every homeowner in this neighborhood contributes to the HOA fund. Those dues are where the money for board stipends comes from. You, me, all of us sitting here. We're not volunteers anymore, remember? We voted on compensation last year. And this man right here," he pointed at me, "is one of the biggest contributors." My eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what do you mean by biggest contributors?" "I pay the same HOA fees as everyone else," Harris sighed, flipping open a binder. "Normally, yes. But your property? You own the duplex, right? That means you pay double. 2 units, 2 dues. And since you always pay on time, the association has been running smoothly. You cover more than Karen does, more than I do, more than anyone else in this room." The board members shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Karen's face flushed red. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "Rules are rules, Harris. Just because he pays more doesn't mean he can ignore them." I crossed my arms. "I'm not asking to ignore rules. I'm asking not to be fined for something petty. 2 hours. You're acting like I left a car on cinder blocks in my driveway." Several people in the room chuckled quietly, trying to hide it. Karen glared at them. Harris leaned back in his chair, hands clasped. "Look, Karen, I'm not saying rules don't matter, but we need to be fair. And we need to remember why we're here. Without dues, none of this works. And if you drive people away with ridiculous fines, they'll stop paying happily. Or worse, they'll challenge the HOA legally. Karen's voice went shrill. So what, we just let him get away with it? That's favoritism. No, Harris said firmly. That's common sense. We're here to keep the neighborhood running, not to nickel and dime homeowners, especially the ones literally funding our paychecks. I couldn't help but smile. For once, someone on the board was speaking with reason. Karen slammed her notebook shut. This is outrageous. You're undermining my authority. Authority? Harris shot back. You're the chair, Karen, not the queen. The room went dead silent again. Even I had to hold back a laugh. Karen's eyes darted around the table, desperate for support. But none of the board members came to her rescue. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Karen's face went beet red. She was gripping her notebook so tightly. I thought the pen clipped inside might snap in half. This board was elected to enforce the rules. She barked. If we let one violation slide, everyone else will think they can ignore the guidelines too. That's chaos. Trash cans left out, lawns overgrown, driveways cluttered. It'll be the downfall of this neighborhood. Her dramatics earned nothing but eye rolls from the rest of the board. Harris calmly set his binder on the table and leaned forward. Karen, nobody is asking to abolish the rules, he said, his voice calm but sharp. We're asking for reasonable enforcement. A trash can visible for 2 hours is not worth $100 fine. It's worth a warning, if that. One of the other board members, an older woman named Mrs. Perez, finally spoke up. You know, Harris is right. I've lived here for 15 years. The rules are meant to protect property values, not to squeeze residents dry. I don't see how fining someone for something so small does anything but make us look ridiculous. Another board member nodded. Honestly, I've been uncomfortable with some of these fines too. It feels less like community management and more like a money grab. Karen whipped around, eyes wide. So now you're all turning against me? After everything I've done to keep this neighborhood in line? In line? Harris repeated, raising a brow. This isn't the military, Karen. These are our neighbors. And quite frankly, you've been treating them like criminals. Laughter rippled through the back of the room, where a few homeowners sat in on the meeting. I hadn't even realized others were listening, but they were clearly enjoying the show. Karen's composure cracked further. This is insubordination, she cried. The bylaws state that as chair, I have final say on violations. No, Harris corrected, flipping to a page in the binder. The bylaws state you have the power to recommend actions. Final approval comes from the board. And right now, it looks like the board doesn't agree with you. The color drained from Karen's face. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a comeback. She just sat there, frozen, her authority crumbling in front of everyone. Then Mrs. Perez spoke again, her tone firm but kind. Karen, we all appreciate the time you've put into this community, but maybe it's time you ease off the fines and remember, we're neighbors first. A murmur of agreement swept through the room. Karen's lips trembled, her eyes darting between the board members and the homeowners watching her unravel. For once, she wasn't in control, and it terrified her. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen sat rigid, her jaw clenched, her fingers drumming nervously on the table. She was so used to running these meetings like a queen commanding her court. But now, for the first time, the board wasn't bowing to her. I leaned back in my chair, watching it unfold. Honestly, I didn't even need to argue anymore. Harris and the others were doing it for me. Harris closed his binder and folded his hands on the table. So, to be clear, the motion to fine Mr. Collins for a minor trash can violation. Do we have support? Karen immediately raised her hand. Yes, absolutely yes. But when Harris looked to the others, not a single hand went up. Mrs. Perez shook her head firmly. Another board member crossed his arms and said, No. Karen's face fell. You can't be serious. You're all just going to let him get away with it? Mrs. Perez responded calmly. It's not about letting him get away with anything. It's about fairness. We don't punish neighbors for something this small. This fine is dismissed. The homeowners in the back clapped quietly, some even nodding in approval. I caught a couple of them smiling at me, like we'd just shared a victory together. Karen, though, was livid. Dismissed? You're undermining the rules. You're undermining me. Harris leaned forward, his voice low but steady. No, Karen. We're protecting the integrity of this board. And frankly, your behavior is putting that at risk. Karen slammed her palm on the table. This is outrageous. I'm the chair. And chairs can be voted out, Harris said simply. That shut her up. She froze, blinking rapidly, as if the idea had never crossed her mind. But judging from the looks on the board members' faces, it wasn't just a hypothetical threat. Mrs. Perez cleared her throat. Perhaps it's time we review Karen's role at the next meeting. If the board feels her leadership is damaging the community, then maybe we need to elect someone else. The homeowners in the back started whispering excitedly. You could almost feel the tide turning against Karen in real time. She looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to back her up. But nobody came to her defense. Not one. For the first time, Karen looked small, powerless. I stood, holding the now crumpled violation notice in my hand. So, I guess this fine is officially off the table. Harris smiled. Officially dismissed. I nodded, tucking the paper into my pocket. Good to know. As I walked out of the meeting, I heard the quiet chatter of neighbors finally daring to criticize Karen aloud. Her reign of fear was crumbling, and there wasn't a thing she could do about it. And me? I just smiled, knowing I'd beaten HOA Karen at her own game. Enjoying this wild HOA Karen showdown? Hit that subscribe button for more crazy neighborhood drama stories. Also, give this video a like if you think the treasurer was right to stand up to her, and drop a comment below. What's the pettiest HOA rule you've ever heard of?